gentlemen. This is your boy DJ Catsanova, and again, doing an overseas interview. And this time, I have the pleasure of speaking with Joseph Black. Hey, sir, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for being here as well. So, Joseph Black is your real name, right?
Yes.
What made you want to use that instead of like going with, I guess, a traditional, like, catchy band name?
Um, I've been in two bands, Honey Drum and Donovan Blanc, and I just felt like it was an opportunity to just put my name on it instead of kind of coming up with kind of screen to hide behind. So that was kind of my thinking, is that I already done it twice. And since this was just going to be really a solo effort, I just assumed stick with my name, and that's that.
So, how did Joseph Black, the artist, come to be? How did you get into making music?
Music's always been a pretty big part of my life, ever since I was a younger kid. My father was a musician, not as a profession, but he played, he played in bands in the 60s and 70s. Actually, his one of his band, The Ruins, had made some demos in the 60s, and unbeknownst to him, I just kind of found it pretty recently. But Meow Group actually released his band's 4 demo track, which is kind of neat. But yeah, he was. My dad was a musician and always had music on in the house, and kind of pushed me to take piano lessons at a very young age. So making music was just a natural extension of that, as a kid.
So, when you were growing up, who was someone you remember your dad playing a lot?
Yeah, my dad is a pretty eclectic guy. We would listen to like all different stuff. So anything from like Eric Satie, we would listen to a lot of classical stuff in the house of all the kind of standard boxes that you would tick. Franz Liszt, who is, obviously an incredible piano composer, Hungarian guy. My dad is a Hungarian guy as well. So that was kind of something that you really always like to talk about, how Franz Liszt was kind of this Hungarian genius. And we listened to a lot of rock and pop, obviously. The Beatles. My dad was more of a Stones guy. I was always more of a Beatles guy. But all that stuff that my dad grew up listening to was on in the house when I was a kid. So pretty varied, but mostly in the classical and then kind of pop rock genre. We didn't listen to a ton of jazz in my house. Jazz is something I kind of discovered a little later on in life, middle school, high school. I love it. I don't play jazz. Obviously, my music isn't super inspired by jazz, but
Was your mom of any influence as well? Like, was she a musician?
my mom wasn't a musician, but my mom is also just a huge fan of music. Same thing when I was younger. She would listen to the stuff that she liked, which was a bit different than the stuff my dad liked. My mom was really into folk music, 70s folk music, and 60s folk music. She listened to a lot of James Taylor, Cat Stevens, that kind of stuff. She was really into like the moody blues, more kind of 60s moody blues, 70s moody blues, and just kind of 60s pop and folk with Moms and the Papas and stuff like that. So
Oh, nice. So, do you write, sing, and produce all of your music, or do you have outside input as well?
no, I do it all myself. So occasionally I'll have somebody do drums for me, or I'll have like a musician play an instrument that I can't play, like sax or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, everything is done by myself. This next thing that I'm working on, I'm probably going to hire somebody to do the mastering for me, because that's kind of like a dark art that I don't really quite have a grasp on. And I this is going to be a pretty long release. It's going to be a full LP, and I'm going to press it. So I want it to really sound proper, and I know that mastering for vinyl is very different. So I'll probably have somebody help me out a little bit with that aspect of it. But the recording, writing, producing, and performing for the most part is all going to be done by myself.
And you recently just released a 3-track EP titled Wildest Dreams. What's the inspiration behind that title? And then, if you would, what's your wildest dream?
What I had initially envisioned was I was going to do, so as Honey Drum, we would do like these little 3-track cassettes and release them in kind of succession, rapid fire succession. And that was really fun because it allowed you to kind of get outside your own head a little bit. And instead of having to come up with something that was really this whole album, you could really kind of do like little mini releases, and each one could have its own unique identity. So that was originally what I was going to do with Wildest Dreams, and then obviously all this stuff in 2020 happened, and I got a lot more time on my hands, and I decided to just kind of throw everything into an LP. But that EP was it was originally supposed to kind of be a one bookend of many little cassettes, and the EP itself was, those three tracks specifically were more of a kind of a little bit of an exploration. I mean, it might not necessarily sound like they're all quite different, but they were three different sketches
Hmm.
of stuff that I'm into, and that I'm kind of trying to weave around a little bit. So I think anytime you throw a blanket over an entire genre of music, it's oversimplification and stuff like that. But it's just three different sketches of that world and different parts of that world. And the album, the LP that I'm working on now is going to be, somewhat of a continuation of that. So, kind of looking at certain types of music and certain styles of music through obviously, my lens, as somebody creating it, and kind of cherry picking the things that I like, and, reworking things to not be hammy. It's very challenging in any kind of like a postmodern art form to pay an homage to something that you hold dear, and also not be too ham-fisted and be too obvious, and have it come across to kind of elbow in the ribs, tongue in cheek. So that's been a lot of the challenge, for me, at least, with that little 3-track EP. And then what I'm doing now is finding ways to balance influence and inspiration with some kind of a more modern and forward-looking voice. So I don't know if that answered your question. I might have gone on a bit of a tangent there, but that's...
No, it's okay. So with that being said, the other album that you actually put out, the solo album, Northern Exposure, what about that
Mhm.
project sets itself apart from this one and the one you're currently working on?
Yeah, so Northern Exposure was, a lot of those songs were songs that I'd written while I was still making music as Donovan Blanc and Honey Drum. And that album was kind of my first experience dipping my toes into making something completely on my own without any outside input whatsoever. But it was also kind of the end of a process that I had utilized more so with like Honey Drum and stuff like that, where I just sit down, I write a song and I write it, and that's it, and then I move on from it, and I don't go back to it until it's time to do the final recording, and then I produce it a little bit, but it's not super produced, it's not super, it's definitely conceived of. It wasn't thrown together, but it's more of an exercise and just like, all right, here, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna write this, I'm gonna finish it, I'm gonna move on. Whereas now, there's no rush, and I really want to put as much into something as I can to really bring it to the most lucid version of itself that I can bring it to. And a lot of that has to do with letting time pass. As a younger person, you're impetuous. You want it done quickly. You want to, kind of look at this new thing that you did and listen to it and show it to people. And, you don't necessarily value the use of time as a tool to kind of give you perspective and give you some deeper understanding of what it is you've done. I mean, you can write something and you can say, oh, this is great, or this is garbage, or whatever. And you can go back to it in a week and have a completely different feeling about it. So what I'm doing now with the work that I've been kind of developing for this new LP is really letting things kind of foment and go back to them. And it is interesting because you do go back to things that at one point you might have thought, wow, this is brilliant. And it felt great in the moment. But when you really go back to it, it's like very unimpressive. Whereas other things can be the opposite. So that's what I would say, at least from a process point. The biggest difference between that and then even the most recent EP I put out are obviously there's some stylistic differences as well, which I would just attribute more to just, what I'm listening to or what I'm, where I'm at in life at that point.
All right, so now I'm going to touch on a subject that may be a little bit touchy for you, but I feel it's my duty to do so. Because you were one half of the band Donovan Blanc, which you guys released 2 albums together. I'm very
Mhm.
familiar with your music. I love your music. That's actually how I come to know Joseph Black. but do you think
hmm
there's any chance for you guys to reconciliate your relationship?
It's not so much a matter of reconciliation. It's really just, you know, that music was of a time and a place. That group was of a time and a place, and that was a while ago. So, we kind of did what we wanted to do, and we moved on. So, it's not so much that there was some, huge reason that we stopped doing what we were doing. It kind of just came to a logical conclusion. That was it. And one of my least favorite things in any part of the world, be it music or television or film, is when people just don't know when to end it. And I think that that's sometimes the most important thing, sometimes more important than, how you started, is knowing when to just say, okay, we did what we wanted to do, and let's do something else.
Exactly. And one of my favorite tracks off that album is Veronica. So I actually named my car Veronica, not because of the song, but because of an ex of mine. But literally, I have like a
Okay.
ritual that every time I get in my car, that's usually the first song that I play. Like I have to play Veronica. And then my other
Yeah.
favorite song off that album is Minha Menina.
I'd call you every day if I could. Would you have something to say that I could? And I noticed that your looks going away are having so hard to break. Meow, meow.
And I looked it up. It's
hmm
Portuguese for my girl. Are you of Portuguese
hmm
descent or do you speak Portuguese?
No, I'm not. That track was written by me again a very long time ago. A girl I was seeing at the time was Portuguese, and that song was kind of about the relationship that we had had. So it just seemed like a fitting title to describe that relationship. So no, I'm not Portuguese,
Oh, okay.
but
You
yeah,
said your dad is Hungarian, right?
that's correct. Yeah, he is Hungarian.
Do you speak Hungarian?
Only the dirty words, and like very like conversational stuff. No, I don't. Unfortunately, my mom's second generation Italian, so her parents didn't speak it enough around her for her to pick up on it. My father, of course, spoke Hungarian, but didn't have anybody in our house to speak it with. So, I didn't pick up on the language, as a child, which is, of course, the easiest time to learn something like that. So
Mhm.
I do regret that I didn't have that experience, but
Have you ever been to Hungary before?
yeah, I have. It's a really, really, really beautiful country.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, really cool place. Fortunately, as so many countries are experiencing, their leadership has kind of compromised a lot of their citizens' ability to, have a say and a real democracy, which is something that country's been deprived of for so long. Further deprivation is very sad, but it's a wonderful place. It really is a cool country.
All right. So if you could form the perfect band compiled of artists living or dead, you would be a part of it. Who do you think you would be? Like a lead singer, guitarist, drummer, bass, everybody.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I were going to put together a band, like a super group, I would probably just want to be in the audience to watch them. I would say, like, I would have like Brian Ferry and Todd Rundgren share the like singer role. Guitarist would be Walter Becker, maybe. Um, Keys. I don't know. Keys. I'd have to really, really think about that. There's so many great pianists and keyboardists. Bass, probably Jimmy Haslip, and drummer Jeff Porcaro for sure. And I would just be happy watching. I wouldn't want to, embarrass myself plodding along with such giants.
Who are the top three artists that you're listening to right now? Like if you go on your Spotify, who do you constantly find yourself gravitating towards?
You know, I've been trying my best to kind of not listen to the same thing every day or every week, but I have been going back a lot to the Blue Nile. Past couple months, I've been just kind of revisiting those two albums, which are really really fabulous. Been listening to some of Michael Frank's earlier stuff. So I was listening to some of his later stuff last year, and I've been listening to like the Art of Tea, and those albums, which are really really good, very different from his later work. Besides that, I've been going back through a lot of like Donald Fagen solo works, which are really fun, and especially work well in the warm weather. Those three are probably somewhat heavier rotation, but again, I try not to be too stagnant in my listening because it starts to screw with your writing and your perspective.
When I used to write music, I used to rap, and I would do the same thing. If I was writing music, I would limit the amount of rap I would listen to because I wouldn't want it to like subconsciously influence what I was writing about.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I find that when I'm working on music, when I'm writing, silence is kind of golden. I try not to be too all over the place with my listening habits, and I try to not necessarily like listen to the things that I'm inspired by exclusively, but try to limit the window a little bit, and otherwise the world gets too big and it starts to get unwieldy. And you hear something and you're like, oh, well, I really love it. Maybe I should be doing that, or maybe I should be doing this, or listen to the way he did this, or this change, or that change, and it's a dangerous rabbit hole.
So now we're gonna play a little game. So I have these cards from this company called Pod Decks, and this deck in particular is called What the Heck. So it's just a whole bunch of random ass questions that I'm just gonna ask you. So I laid out three in front of me. I don't know what they are, and I'll just flip them, and you just give me the first thing that pops in your head.
Okay.
All right. If humans came with a warning label, what would yours say?
Hmm.
It's one thing you would warn the world about Joseph Black.
No patience.
That's actually a really good one.
Yeah, I know that about myself, and it's something that I hoped would start to slowly melt away as I got older, but unfortunately it hasn't. I would love to have more patience.
I consider myself to be a patient person, but I'm impatient when it comes to other people. Like I like things done on my time. So if I have to include someone else in something and they're not doing it in a timely fashion as I would, then I become impatient. Impatient.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, there's certain things that I'm patient with, and there's certain things that I'm not, but when I'm impatient, it's painful. So.
All right. Number two, let's see. When you were a kid, did you have any posters on your wall? If so, of who?
So I had a Beatles poster on my wall, and I had I think that was it. I think I just had a Beatles poster. My room was pretty small, so I didn't have like a ton of wall space. They were my guys when I was in like fifth and sixth grade, and my parents said I could decorate my room the way I saw fit. Beatles were like my absolute favorite band. And
What's your favorite Beatles album?
It's funny. My favorite Beatles album for the longest time isn't really even a Beatles album. It's just a kind of a single compilation, a Magical Mystery Tour, which I would say is probably still one of my favorite things they put together. It's just, the songs are great. They're really interesting. They're so varied. I mean, all of their albums are like that, but there's just something about that album. Those tracks I just love them. So I would have to send them a non-answer because it's not really it's not really an album, but I would say Magical Mystery Tour is up there for me.
Nice. And this is the last one. If you could talk to one species of animal, which one would it be?
I mean, I guess dogs, right? Like that seems like the most practical. I mean, I have a dog. I'm around dogs. It would be nice to be able to like, hey, what are you barking about? What do you want to go out? Do you want this? Do you want that? I would say that would be the most useful thing in my life. I don't know if there's any other animals I would necessarily want to talk to.
I'm sorry, sir, but the answer we were looking for is cats. Cats would be the number one animal you would want to talk to. 'Cause obviously I'm a cat
I'm
person.
not a cat person. I'm not a big cat. I don't dislike cats, but I never really had them as a kid and stuff like that. So I was always more of a dog guy.
Oh man, I love cats. As hence the name DJ Catsanova. It's like I'm a Casanova of cats is how my name came to be.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Everybody's, different strokes, man.
I appreciate you doing this interview with me and taking the time out to sit here and chat with me. Soon as it's all done, I will let you know. And if you're gonna release that new LP, please let me know so I can retweet it and repost it all over all of my social media pages.
Absolutely, will do. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
All right, man. Thank you. This interview was edited by Steve Francis of Stush Music. Be sure to follow me on all your social media platforms at DJ Catsanova for new music, a playlist every Friday, and shows happening in the Bay Area. Stay cool, cats and kittens.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.